so a couple of shout-outs. First of all, this is my place. Like, this is Oklahoma City is my place, and this is my home church, and so it's such an honor to be here with those of you who are in the audience and those of you who are streaming. We're just glad to be here, and I just have a burden for you. Like, I know we're videotaping, they'll edit, whatever, but I want you to understand, like, I have a heart and a burden for you today and for what happens in this room and not just on the other side of those cameras. And so I'm just glad to be with you here. I'm also kind of want to give a shout out to the child welfare leadership team, most of which is here in the state of Oklahoma, is here in this room, okay? They came to this conference. Since I sent in my little here's who I am stuff, my position has changed, and now I get to be a part of that child welfare leadership team, and I want you to understand something. There's something special going on here in Oklahoma City with child welfare leaders who are very interested in trying to figure out how do we engage the church, and how does the church come alongside, and how do we see an end to this issue of the need for kids in foster care to be taken care of, or the need to serve families who are broken. And so it's an honor to be with you, but it's really, really an honor to be in this place with those people today. So my name is Deb. I'm a pediatrician, which is kind of funny because I actually don't like children very much. So it's a little kind of joke between me and God, I guess. I was going to be an ER doctor when I went to medical school because I wanted to see like broken bones and bleeding and things like that. And I didn't know that, all these years later I'd be taking care of a different kind of brokenness than what I thought I would be taking care of. But when I was a medical student in my third year of medical school, I did a rotation on child abuse and neglect, and I found myself in courtrooms and out with child welfare workers, out in homes that didn't have electricity. The first home I went out to with a child welfare worker had a dead horse in the front yard that we had to walk around to get to the home. The home did not have power or water, and children came running out the door, and I didn't know what to do. Like, they didn't prep me for what to do if the kids come running out the door, so I just kind of got paralyzed, and I thought, am I supposed to tackle them? Am I supposed to, I don't know what to do. I just stood there, like an idiot because I had no idea we were going to walk into those kinds of situations. And so very quickly in that space, even though my heart was in medicine, what I found was, wow, I'm really interested in who these kids are. And I'm really interested in who these foster families are that take extra kids to their house, because I've never had that thought in my life, never. I have a couple of kids, I like them, so don't worry, about them. But I don't get to the weekend and say, can we find some more? Usually it's kind of the opposite, like, where can you guys go, So to have foster families who would take in kids that didn't belong to them just for the purpose of loving on them and taking care of them was a strange thing to me, and it was amazing. And at the same time, I met birth families, and I realized, wow, those families are not so different from me. If I'd have made a different decision or two, I'd be in that same spot, and I fell in love with the whole deal. So I wound up in pediatrics, and somewhere along the way while I was training, God said, hey, if you'll do this, if you'll follow me into this place that I'm leading you, this place that I'm calling you, you're going to see me do something in this generation that is astounding, because I'm fixing to move on a generation of foster kids, and if you'll follow me and you'll go to work for me and you'll give your life for this, you're going to see something that's really cool. And so I believed that, right? I mean, it's cool. You're like a young person going into this amazing field, following God, think it's going great. I went to the shelter. I was when I was on faculty here at the University of Oklahoma College of Medicine. Part of my job was to go to the shelter, the foster care emergency shelter here in Oklahoma City, and to see kids, provide health care for the kids who were coming into that shelter. Now, I've been in that shelter 13 years now, taking care of kids. I've seen 20,000 kids pass through that shelter door. And I learned a lot about kids in foster care. I learned about the fact that sometimes childhood adversity really affects you, not just now, but in the future. I learned about what the outcomes of children who have experienced stress, toxic stress in their childhood, what that lifetime impact is going to be. And I saw these little kids coming in front of me at the shelter, and they looked pretty cute and pretty okay. And I'm writing on my medical notes, I have no concerns, because they didn't have immediate health issues. And I looked at that and I thought, I have a lot of concerns. I have a lot of concerns about what's going to happen with this little group of 3 kids that I'm sitting talking to and saying, hey, what's your story? What kind of experiences have you had? How did you get to this place? And thinking about what's life going to look like for you in the absence of some kind of intervention. And so what I did was what I knew how to do. I was a doctor, right? So I worked on the medical system. I worked on trying to make that clinic great and trying to create a foster clinic that would provide long-term care for kids in foster care. We took all kinds of kids. We took kids who went home to their parents. We didn't care if they went to adoption. It didn't matter. They were our kids, and we wanted to hang on to them as long as we could. We tried to get kids to the best mental health services we could. I worked with child welfare. I've worked with child welfare for years on all kinds of projects, trying to figure out how do I help caseworkers understand that when they have that kid trapped in the back of the car and they're driving them somewhere, that's a perfect time to tell them that they're worth something. It's a perfect time to tell them that they're valuable and that they're not forgotten about and that they're not lost. It's perfect. And so I did all this stuff for a long time. But, you know, the truth of the matter is there's a lot of days when I don't know if it's working. I was in court on Monday, you know, and I was asked to bring a professional opinion on a situation that I can bring a professional opinion to, but I cannot fix the mess of that situation. There's nothing I'm going to say that's going to be able to influence the outcome of what is a disaster happening in front of us, where there's so many different people who have interests in what's going on there, laws that apply, all different kinds of factors coming in to bear with this little group of 3 young children that were present in the court. And at the end of days like that, sometimes I don't know if it's working. And when you get to a place like that, when I get to a place like that, what it's done for me is made me have to deal with the fact, do I believe what God said? Do I believe God's good? Do I believe that back those years ago when he said, hey, follow me and we're going to do something here, that it actually is going to work out the way I want it to? Do I believe at the end of the day that he's got this deal, whether the kid goes to adoption or the kid runs away or the kid goes home to their mom and dad? Or whether we take a child from their family and put them in foster care, or we don't, we leave them in that home that we're not so sure about, but we're worried. Do I believe at the end of that day that he's good and that he's got this? And for me, I mean, some of it has been experience, it's been watching. Thousands of kids. My clinic, children's, besides the shelter clinic, we've seen 25,000 kids in the last 9 years. It's a lot of stories, a lot of families. I met a foster mom who had had some kids, the couple of kids that were kind of school age when they came to her home. And she goes to church, and she took them to church because that's what she does. And she had them for a couple of years, and they learned a lot about God. And they got saved, and one of them got baptized, and all this kind of stuff. It was great. But then you know what happened? She thought she was going to get to adopt them, and the caseworker switched, and the judge switched, and the next thing you know, they're reunifying with a mom who said to her on the day that they were reunified, "You will never see these children again. You'll never see them again." Okay? Foster mom was telling me, she said, that was 2 years ago. She said, 2 weeks ago, knock on my door at 9 o'clock at night, and I open the door, and there are those boys, and they're standing there with their dad, who had not previously been involved in their life. And the dad said, they wanted to come and see you, because I've been visiting with them now on weekends, and they've been dragging me to church, because they wanted to go to church, and I got saved, and they wanted me to come and tell you that they're so glad that they got to go home. They love your family. They think of themselves as part of your family. But they're so glad they got to go home, because by going home, now I'm here. And I'm different because of these boys. And I've gotten to see that. And I've looked at Scripture and said, you know, God, where are you in some of this mess? And I find Scripture that's reassuring to me. And there's Scripture like Deuteronomy 7:9. It says, know, recognize, and understand, therefore, that the Lord your God is indeed God. He's indeed God. He's the faithful God. He's faithful, who keeps his covenant for 1,000 generations. 1,000 generations. There's Scripture. We talk about sometimes the generational impact of abuse. I've heard that mentioned a couple of times today. And I know I saw it in the shelter setting. I saw it with a third-generation family who'd been in the shelter. Grandma had been there. Mom had been there. Now the baby's there. We saw it. But there's a Scripture that says, sins of the father that pass down the third and fourth generation. But when one generation turns to me, when one generation turns their face to me, I'll bless them for 1,000 generations. That matches this, right? He says he's a faithful God who keeps his covenant for 1,000 generations. He lavishes his unfailing love on those who love him. Let me tell you something. We're at an incredible moment in time where God is showing up. This is the beginning. What's happening in this space, this is the beginning. And I want you to really understand, even on those days when things aren't going that well, even in those moments where you're not sure the court made the right decision, or you're kind of mad at the caseworker, or you don't know what to do with this kid because they're a mess and they're driving you crazy, I want you to understand If we can get a hold of a generation, one single generation, God will certainly show up. And if that generation will turn to him, and we, the church, we're the ones who have that message for these kids and for these families, he'll bless them for 1,000. There's going to be a day when we stand in this space and we have a conference, and it's not about foster care. It's about what God did, because there's not any more kids in foster care. I want you to understand, we're going to be here. There's going to be a day like that, and I hope to see all of you at that.